Where was Just Dance Quarantine Edition? You had enough time to show 2 mobile games, 3 first-person shooters, and the 3rd game in a franchise no one's ever cared about. But dabbing Panda on a Zoom call, you didn't have time for.
Fuck you.
You also showed 3 multiplayer first-person shooters, and didn't have enough time for an aggressively awkward, definitely real conversation between a group of friends who definitely were not actors.
So you guys are coming, or what? Yeah. Oh, Merry Christmas.
But you had enough time for a nauseating short film that was the emotional equivalent of Satan mama birding bleach into my eyes as someone recites an incredibly important poem regarding very important subject matter.
Because I am not a street artist.
But now applied to hackers in a post-Brexit Britain. I know you may be thinking, isn't this a positive? It's a streamlined event focusing on games that gamers play. But I fear you may have missed an important aspect of the previous Ubisoft events. Memes. And yes, the memes are important. Because whilst they were poorly scripted and awkwardly executed live events, they were fun. Not for the right reasons, but they were fun. And somehow Ubisoft delivered a show as awful and cringeworthy as their E3 showcases, without the fun.
Impairing our frontal lobe again, are we?
Bags, don't disturb me in my natural habitat.
And that's because the flaw is a fundamental issue. Their games suck. Or at least what they showed sucked. The main draw of this event was Watch Dogs Legion, a game no one cared or asked for, and Assassin's Creed Valhalla, a game with an identity crisis. Or as I call them, Ubisoft's answer to Cyberpunk and Witcher. And if I were to grade them, they'd get an F. Let's examine why.
London will be the first city in the world to be made truly safe.
Watch Dogs Legion is the 3rd game in the Watch Dogs franchise, and they are still trying to figure out who this is for. What started off as a grimy, overly moderated Chicago city following one character's personal journey, is now a cartoonishly villainous Britain with heavily armoured cops who could be defeated by a construction worker, discount John Wick, or an old lady. It's the difference between Mafia, GTA and Saints Row, all in one franchise. And that's not to say the first game is good, it's actually incredibly dull, but there was at least a central focus with a clear intention behind it. Legion wants to be taken seriously and explore themes of xenophobia, abuse of power from the government, and the manipulation of news. But it also wants the funny old lady to tase people and say words with a little British accent.
I'm tickled, but think more underground.
Well, unless you choose to play another character, which Ubisoft has been heavily marketing since it was first announced. So it's ironic that its biggest selling point is also the most concerning aspect of the game. The concept of recruiting possibly anyone in the open world and playing as them sounds like an endlessly exciting experience. Because if you're ever bored with the old lady, then you can be an officer infiltrating a highly secured area with your status. It's like Agent 47 wearing disguises but endlessly. The problem with this is the game can't provide an endless experience without taking up an endless amount of development time and money, individually creating characters the size of London's population. So instead they build a handful of character types and then have everything else be procedurally generated. It's the equivalent of a new skin in Overwatch. My old lady may look slightly different to every other, but she will be one of many old lady types. Ubisoft are already allergic to good writing, only managing to create a handful of well-written protagonists, and none of them are on Watch Dogs. So just imagine what they're going to do, having to give a personality to the several possible recyclable characters. It guarantees nothing dramatic or exciting can happen in the narrative because it needs to account for who you're going to play with, removing any weight of choice. This also becomes an issue with the performances, because as I'm sure you noticed,
just help me get some closure and I'll do whatever you want.
Sounds like a DedSec problem. Leave it to us.
They are awful. And that's what happens when you have to split time between multiple character types and customization options that speak to that character. When the net is so wide, it's impossible to capture a character's essence either through the voice or animation. Limitations are important in a game, because developers can spend time perfecting a set experience rather than having no boundaries on what you can do, but they're boring. A similar argument was made towards No Man's Sky, a game addicted to an ever-expanding universe, but with nowhere to go and nothing to do. And no game should want to be like No Man's Sky.
In Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you will relive the epic saga of the Viking invasion of England.
I was actually really excited for Valhalla. I remember playing through their recent entries, and whilst Odyssey is a stale, exhaustingly long mess of a game, Origins was a real breath of fresh air with a protagonist I adored, which I hadn't thought possible since Black Flag. And Valhalla is made by not only the same team as Origins and Black Flag, it's also got the same composer for the original Assassin's Creed, and one of their strongest writers too. So there's a lot of talent behind this game, but really the problem is Ubisoft. I know this is still a couple months away from release, so they have time to touch up on bugs, balancing, and optimization. The issue is, the game would still be unappealing, because not only does it have little to do with Assassins or the Creed, it just looks like The Witcher 3, but bad. It's a game that feels guilty at every corner and never shines at any one thing, and maybe that has a lot to do with what they showcased. The entire demo felt so scatterbrained, I could barely remember any one thing except from the cat and the boat. All they needed to do was show the core gameplay loop. Maybe clear out a bandit camp stealthily and then as a Viking, to show that it's still an Assassin's game if you want it to be. Instead, they showed 5 minutes of a main mission and focused the rest on Jenga.
Think of this as a test of mind and wit. Stack the cairn stones high and wide into any shape you like.
I mean, you can spend as much time as you want building these things, making them as high as you want, as weird as you want. I'm sure like a lot of these stuff will end up on the internet, like people comparing structures. And the cool thing is that once you've built it and you decide to get out of it, it sort of stays there. And so that's yours, right? And until the moment where you come back and you want to build a new one, it's sort of cool that we were able to give that to players to express themselves.
And fishing.
Yeah, that's it. So we gave Eivor a fishing line so you can actually throw out a line and go catch some fish.
Who thought that was a good idea? The game also looks incredible at times, and then muddy on the next. The combat looks brutal and satisfying during its finishes, but way too fast with little to no impact to be satisfying. It's made far worse with the camera distance so far and might as well be the Raven at all times. These are issues I'm sure won't be fixed because they were already problems in Origins and Odyssey. The best example is the dodge and kicking ability seen in the demo. Eivor can dodge at the speed of light and kick you into the fiery depths of hell, and it just looks ridiculous considering they're supposed to be human. And I know this won't change because these same issues were brought up in Origins and Odyssey. So you'd think they want to address them in this showcase, but as it is now, it looks like a reskin. They could have reassured everyone this would be a quality game with some small changes, like bringing the camera closer so everything felt more personal, slowing down the combat but increasing the impact to enhance the Viking experience, and most importantly, making it impossible to kick someone a football yard's